and Namaskar. Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on climate change and extreme weather events organized by the National Institute of Disaster Management in collaboration with India Meteorological Department. This is the final webinar of 4 webinar series entitled Hydrometeorological Hazard Risk Reduction. One of the most visible consequences of a warming world is an increase in the intensity and frequency of extreme weather events. A changing climate leads to change in the frequency, intensity, spatial, and time of weather and climate extremes, and can result in unprecedented extremes as well. Weather or climate events, even if not extreme in a statistical sense, can still lead to extreme conditions or impact either by crossing a critical threshold in a social, ecological, or physical system or by occurring simultaneously with other events. Some climate extremes, such as droughts, floods, may be the result of an accumulation of weather or climate events that are individually not extreme themselves. Changes in extreme can also be directly to changes in mean climate because mean future condition in some variables are projected to lie within the tails of the present day conditions, and the assessment of changes in climate that are relevant to extreme impact and disasters needs to consider several aspects. To enlighten us in more detail in the topic of today's webinar, climate change and events, we have with us distinguished speakers, namely Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, VSM Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management, world-renowned Professor Kapil Gupta from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, Dr. D.R. Patnaik, Scientist F from India Meteorological Department, and Dr. Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM. Once again, I welcome all the distinguished speakers, participants who have joined us via Cisco WebEx platform and several other participants who are watching us live in YouTube. Your active participation is important throughout the session. You can enter your questions and comments in the question and answer box. We will have question and answer session at the end of the webinar after all presentations for distinguished speakers. Now I would like to call upon our ED NIDM Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, VSM, for his inaugural address. During his more than 3 decades of service to Government of India, he has held important command and staff assignments such as Deputy Director General in Directorate of Army Air Defense, Director of Center for United Nations Peacekeeping, Secretary of International Association of Peacekeeping Training Centers. Without further ado, Executive Director, NIDM, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, I request for him for his inaugural address. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Harjeet. I first of all welcome all the participants who have joined this webinar on such an important topic. And my heartiest welcome and thanks to Professor Kapil Gupta from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and Dr. D.R. Patnaik, Scientist F from IMD, and our own Professor Surya Prakash from NITM, who will be speaking in this particular webinar. And it's a very good thing that NITM and IMD have collaborating to conduct a series of webinars on important topics where we are connecting forecasting capability and ground expectations, aspirations of the people on one platform. This particular topic is very important because it is affecting our lives in many ways. As we can see that there is a new pattern of more frequent and more intense weather events which are unfolding around the world. For example, I'll just give you how a small event keeps triggering one action after another. Global warming. It can contribute to the intensity of the heat wave by increasing the chances of very hot days and nights, hot nights. Warming air also boosts the evaporation, which can worsen the drought. And this drought further creates dry fields and forests, that are prone to catching fire. And increasing temperatures mean a longer wildfire season. Global warming also increases the water vapor in the atmosphere, which can lead to more frequent heavy rain and some snowstorms. So all these events are so interrelated. I've just given you one small example. There are hundreds of such examples which climate scientists will be able to tell us that everything is related somewhere on climate change. There was a study in Michigan University uh, which talks about that 97% of the scientific community has accepted that much of our natural disasters and environmental degradation is due to climate change and anthropogenic reasons. So there are many factors which contribute to any extreme weather event which we are experiencing. A warming world, which has made many extreme weather events more frequent, intense, and widespread, which is a trend which is likely to intensify in future. So there is a requirement of new scientific approaches. There is a requirement of the climate scientists to get together and discuss this issue, which we are doing today also. There's a new dimension now being added is health aspects. Is there a need to bring in the health scientist also in this whole ambit of climate change? This pandemic, what do we call it? It is not an extreme weather event, but it is an extreme event. It is not a normal disaster which comes once in a while, which can be predicted. But somewhere it is related to our lifestyle. So will the lifestyle also be part of the climate change? So there are many questions which scientific community is debating as to what should contribute as causes of extreme weather events and what should not constitute as causes of extreme weather events. The economic cost and the social costs due to such extreme weather events caused due to climate change is also increasing, and it is increasing at a very fast pace. So investing in developing countries, whereas what is happening is that the investment in developing countries is more focused on recovery from a disaster than on the creation of an adaptive capacity to fight the disaster. So this is the cycle we have to break, that we go in for preparing the community, making a resilient community so that they are able to face the disaster better and also recover from it in better and get back on the origin on their feet at a much faster rate in a much better form. There was a study done by Down to Earth State of India Environment 2020 report, which talks about there were 19 extreme weather events in the year 2019 in India, which claimed 1,357 lives, in which heavy rains and flooding accounted for 63% of these deaths. So this itself tells us that other than normal disasters, natural and man-made, extreme weather events are also responsible for causing a lot of damage, destruction, and economic loss to us. Climate change, we all know, is a global challenge, and it requires efforts by all nations based on the principles of common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities. So that responsibility and capabilities have to be mashed together. So to facilitate mainstreaming this particular asset, this particular aspect, there is a need to have a dialogue between the climate researchers, the engineering community, the policy making authorities, and other stakeholders. And that is the very purpose for holding these webinars, wherein we are getting practitioners also, and among the participants, we have many who belong to either of one of the categories that I took, or multi-stakeholder engagement when we talk about. Within our participants we have. So my request to the participants is that they should ask pertinent questions. They should not use the question forum for saying good morning and introducing themselves. That they should do in the chat box, but in the question and answer forum which is there in this particular platform, they should pose intelligent questions, relevant questions and observations, which others can read and everyone can learn from each other, because many participants are very learned, and they themselves can take on half the lectures that we keep planning. So my request to the participants is to contribute in that way to make this particular discussion more vibrant and more challenging for the speakers. And your questions itself bring out aspects which could not be covered due to paucity of time. And with this, I'll end my initial keynote. Uh, but I'm looking forward to hearing the speakers, because this is a very important topic and very pertinent topic in today's world, for which we need to take note of. With this, I thank everyone and again welcome everyone. And over to you, Dr. Harjeet.
Thank you, sir, for your informative address. And now we are going to start our technical session. For first presentation, we have Dr. D.R. Patnaik, Scientist F from India Meteorology Department, to share his vast knowledge and experience. He has been engaged in research work in the areas of monsoon variability, monsoon forecasting, extend range forecasting, and extreme weather events, heavy rainfall, heat wave, cyclones, etc. Climate variability, climate change, etc. He has published more than 70 research papers in peer-reviewed international, national journals, and also contributed many scientific contributions brought him much recognition and award like Certificate of Merit for Outstanding Contribution in the Field of Atmospheric Science and Technology by the Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India, and so on. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Patnaik. Sir, floor is yours.
Yeah, can you see my slide?
Yes, sir. Your presentation is
fine.
visible.
Yeah, so very good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me for giving this talk on an important topic, climate change in extreme weather. This is taking my time, just a minute. Yeah, so what are the points I am going to discuss? This is climate system and what is the difference between climate variability and climate change, and what based on the instrumental record, what are the climate changes that occur globally and as well as also India, and how it is this object climate change is related to the extreme weather. And there are also the governing body, international governing body like IPCC and many various platforms like that. They are giving some climate projection for near future, and the implication of increasing extreme weather due to climate change, how it is going to affect the disaster management, and also how IMD will take care of that part. So this is the climate system. If you see lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, they are the major component of Earth atmosphere system climate. So that consisting of all, we call it climate system. And there are various processes that is interacting. Sun radiation is the prime source of energy, and there are atmospheric gases, and interaction, latent heat release, all this evaporation, cloud interaction. So these are the processes of climate system. So this is a complex system, and we are dealing with a very complex system to study the atmosphere and climate. But new addition to climate system, that is the anthrosphere. What it mean by anthrosphere means which part of the climate system that is changed by the interaction with human. So this is the area that means the man-made climate change. So certainly some part we are, because of interaction we are changing the part of the atmosphere and climate. As a result, the climate change. So now new addition to the climate system, that is anthrosphere, that part of the climate system which is interacting with human being, and it is changed due to the interaction. Now basic difference when we are calling climate variability and climate change, most of the people sometimes we confuse with the variability and change. Variability vary with respect to time and space scale, and change is also with respect to longer time and space scale. If you see the variability, just this year is very hot, or this year is very cold, this summer is more rainy, or the previous summer was less rainy, something. So this is part of the variability. Some abnormal in a particular year, if we see, it is not a change. We don't call it change. So climate variability, they already define the temporal variation of the atmosphere ocean system around a mean state. If the mean state is that is how it is deviated from the mean state. Okay, that is variability. Or but change is any systematic change. When we see this variability of a systematic nature and it persists for a longer time, and temperature rainfall is longer time, it is changing in the same pattern, then we call it a climate change. It can last for several decades or so. So when we define the climate change, we take generally a 30 years of, if there is 30 years of average, if there is a really change from this previous 30 years, then we call it a climate change. So there are climate change, it can be a long-term climate change because we have the record of only 200 years, let us say instrumental record, but the climate system exists for million of years. So there are various theories that deals with the climate change of long-term climate change, that is Milankovitch cycle, that are, means, but basically the three parameters, orbital parameters of the Earth, how it is rotating along the around the sun. So that is long-term climate change. And when we come to the our instrumental record period, we call it climate change due to anthropocentric factor, that is greenhouse increase. So this is short-term climate change. So in the long-term climate change, there are three parameters. If you see here, there is axis of the Earth, that is near circle to elliptic axis, that this changes with very slowly, and it is a periodicity of 1 lakh year. And that is the obliquity. Obliquity means the angle of this tilting of 23.5. So it varies from 21.5 to 24.5. So this angle, obliquity angle, varies, and it is a period of 41,000 years. So this is long periodicity. And there is this is a precision. So this precision is also, this also changes, and that is around 21,000 years. So because of this is the orbital parameters, and the periodicity, if you see, this is the eccentricity 1 lakh year, obliquity about 41,000 years, and this is the precision, change of precision axis, that is 26,000 years. 21. So this is long-term climate change. This helps to your glaciation period, interglacial period. So all this long period climate change, this is the hypothesis, or this is the theory of Milankovitch, proposed by Milankovitch for long time. But we are dealing with very limited short-term climate change, that is for associated with your anthropogenic changes. And if you look at this thing, how one of the major component of this anthropic climate change is the increasing carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide, if you see last 40 years, it is around now less than 320 ppmv. Now it has more than 400. So this 40, 50 years, there are tremendous increase in the carbon dioxide concentration of the atmosphere. As a result, if you see the global temperature lower panel figure, there is a systematic rise in the temperature anomaly. So from last 40, 50 years. So once the changes are systematic, we call it global warming or climate change. So this warming is a systematic in nature and consistently it is occurring during last 40 years or something. So this is now, we can treat this as a climate change. And the major component why this carbon dioxide, the increase of carbon dioxide is the major source of the anthropogenic climate change. So if you see that this is a very simple concept, the greenhouse effect. So greenhouse effect, because in atmosphere there are various gases present that we call greenhouse. Greenhouse, that is not just like water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, all these are called greenhouse gases. So what it does, it allows the solar radiation, sun radiation to pass through these gases and it is received by the earth, observed by the earth's surface, the yellow line. But when it radiates back, that is in the infrared radiation, and when it radiates back, it is observed by the greenhouse gases present in the atmosphere. Greenhouse gases present in the atmosphere, and after that observation, again some of the thing is scattered back, and some of these thing again reflected back. So that will, once it is observed, that will warm the atmosphere, and when it will reflect back to the earth's surface, it will also warm the surface of the earth and also the near to the surface of the earth. So this warming, because of this greenhouse gases, are called global warming. And this is purely anthropogenic, as all this industrialization lead to the increase of carbon dioxide. And if you different sources and sink of the carbon dioxide, if you see there are many sources and sink, and if you do just these are the sources of the thing produced by deforestation, and this is produced by burning of fossil fuel. So this is the how the carbon dioxide is generated, and how they sink. It is law that observed by atmosphere. Atmosphere also observed by some amount, absorbed by ocean. So ocean also absorb this carbon dioxide. So when the carbon dioxide will increase, even this led to the acidification of the ocean. That also we can call the more. So that will damage the marine life to many up to large extent. That means the marine life, because the ocean acidification will lead to the loss of marine life. Observed on land. So this is how during 2000 to 2018 carbon emission, the net is always there is increasing, because this is more than the loss. So if you see here, emission to the atmosphere from burning of fossil fuel rose from 6.3 petagram per year to 10.2 petagram per year. So this is a very large increase. That is also noticed during last 20 years. And this is the how, if you see each gas component, why how it is affected. This is the carbon dioxide concentration. This is warming. This is causing warming. So right panel, whenever this is zero line, right side it is the warming and net radioactive forcing. So it is this side, if it is there, it is causing the cooling. So if you see CO2, the CH4, carbon, methane, and then H2O, all these are causing the warming. And here also halocarbon, CFC, etc. that is also causing warming. But some part of ozone, it is cooling. N2O, nitrous oxide, it is causing warming. So all these things are warming. And there are many other things also that is causing radiation cooling, like here, aerosol cloud also because of aerosol. So but net is always our warming. That's why our surface, because of the increasing major contribution of this industrialization and greenhouse gases, the Earth surface is continuously rising. So that is on the global scale. We have it is documentary evidence that last 50 years something there is increase in temperature, and that is because of the increase in the greenhouse gases. Now on the local scale also, we have whatever instrumental record we have. Even Indian region also, if we see land region, there is a systematic rise of the temperature. Annual mean temperature and observed maximum temperature also rise in temperature. There is this 1.144 degree per 10 years, and this is the anomaly, lower panel, and minimum temperature. So all these things is shown, it is reflected on the regional scale, the rise of temperature, or we can say global warming. Now when we want to relate it to the weather, extreme weather means how this is how it is connected to the day-to-day increase of weather, extreme weather. So before that, what is extreme weather? We just have to have our Indian, just this is the Indian map. If we see here, the India is surrounded by north, the mid latitude, and here tropical ocean. This is large, means land sea contrast are there, but throughout the year, any some type of extreme weather you will get. If you start from winter, you will get here heat, cold wave, and fog, and western disturbances. This is the winter time, western disturbances affecting northern India. Then when you come to pre-monsoon, March, April, May, you have a large zone of thunderstorm activity occur over this Indo-Gangetic plain and northeast India. Sometimes it is associated with lightning, squall, etc. So this is the period pre-monsoon. This is the weather during pre-monsoon. And pre-monsoon also we have some cyclonic storm. Arabian Sea, we have seen recently many intense cyclone in pre-monsoon time over Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. So this is pre-monsoon time, we also get the severe cyclonic storm. And then when we come to the monsoon season, June to September, this is mid-tropospheric cyclone, offshore vortex, monsoon trough, monsoon low, all these cause heavy rainfall during the, and already we have experienced, this is the monsoon time, we have seen the how monsoon heavy rainfall products are occurring over many parts of India. So India is surrounded by such that location throughout the year, any type of this or that type of extended year extreme weather we are getting. And post monsoon, very severe cyclone storm again, October, November, December. So throughout the year. And if you see 7,000 kilometers here, the coastal line, it's prone to cyclone. Then this is the region of heavy rainfall. and we get depression and systems that cause heavy rainfall. 40 million hectares is your flooding region. There are also monsoon failures or drought. It leads to the drought. And drought, moderate drought, heavy probability of heavy, moderate to severe droughts, a large part because of rainfall deficiency, we get drought. And this is the heat wave. March, April, May, June heat wave. And this is thunderstorm. Already you have seen 100 days are more than 100 days are the frequency, normal frequency of, and this is the sometime we get a tornado also. So all type of weather and cyclone pre-monsoon. This is Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. How we are facing the cyclone because of the vast coastal line. So in general, India is a lot of all type of extreme weathers are there: droughts, landslide, forest fire, earthquake, flood, heat wave, cold wave, cyclone, thunderstorm, heavy rainfall. So that all these are called hydrometeorological disasters. So India is facing all type of hydrometeorological disasters. And this is the natural phenomena you will see every year, and cyclone or flood, and this is the drought and cloud burst, and this is how heat wave, cold wave. So all these are there in the Indian. Now come to why. So how we relate the climate change to all these things. That is, if you see this graph, this is the suppose the left one. This is a normal distribution of past climate or previous climate, and now because of climate change, rise in temperature. So the present thing is shifted toward the right. So as a result, whatever small area earlier was occupied by the for the severe weather, now that area large, that area has increased. That area has increased. That's a more record hot weather, more record extreme precipitation. So that we are going to get because of the shifting of the mean toward the higher. This is the climate change and how it is related to your extreme weather. And one is your temperature and another is rainfall. So we'll see. And if you this see the statistic how it is affecting over the South Asia, let us say Asian impact of this hydrometeorological disaster. If you see 90% of the event, 70% of the casualty, and 65% of economic losses are related to hydrometeorological hazards. So if you see here, flood in maximum here, all these things, this is loss of life, this is economic loss, and this is your number of events. So if you look at this thing, the 90%, 70%, and very high contribution is coming from the hydrometeorological disaster, economic loss, the casualty, and also the event. So this is the real fact. Now come object changes in the extreme weather over India. Since we have the record of observational record of IMD having the observation since 1875 and even some observation before that also. So we have the observation record for 150 years something. So how really observe climate change? Whether whatever the observation is there, whether that is also showing some climate change. That we will see. And first we'll see the temperature and rainfall. If you see, this is the heat wave, how the normal temperature more than 37 degree, how many days are there? So this long-term climatology, and this is the area of heat wave. So most part of heat wave, this is normal climatology area of heat wave. So if you see North India and some eastern part of the India, coastal belt, all these things are affected by heat wave. And if you see the trend, heat wave from last 30 years, 1961 to 2010, 40 years, if you see, there is almost everywhere, there is increasing frequency of heat wave. Only over the foothills region or some region, there is slight decreasing frequency. Otherwise, the heat wave is already shown increasing trend over most part of India, significant increasing trend. And yes, that you can see significant increasing trend of heat wave over major part of India. Now come to the rainfall. Because rainfall is the first June to 30 September, that is our monsoon rainfall main period, where most of the rainfall is occur for the annual during this 4 months. So this failure of monsoon, this is also showing some variability. Sometimes drought frequency are increasing. So most of the drought in last 20 years, you can see here, only except last year was excess year, otherwise many drought years. So there is also just a increasing frequency. And but when you say this the rainfall variability, droughts are there, but there is no trend. If you cannot draw the trend, that means overall fortunate part of the thing that overall rainfall over India, monsoon rainfall is not showing any significant increasing or decreasing trend. That is a very good sign. But that is there is difference angle here. But that increasing, though the rainfall is not showing any increasing trend, but if when we say the frequency of heavy rainfall, means 122 days monsoon season, but how many days are with more heavy rainfall event, that frequency are now increasing. So frequency of heavy rainfall, that means one day it will rain at the cost of no rain or very light rain for 5-7 days. So that is happening. That is happening, or that is because of the increasing in extreme weather. And study also show this extreme increasing extreme rainfall events are more over the urban area compared to rural area. So that is also another thing that also will lead to the urban flooding and all these things that we are observing this also. The city like Delhi, Mumbai, or Nagpur, all these things, many cities are now facing urban flooding. So urban, this is also study has shown that there is increasing frequency of heavy rainfall more in urban area. Yeah, so that are leading to the increasing frequency of flood and also drought. Drought, as I said, earlier cases and this case, drought also is increasing. So these are all observed climate change. And when we wanted to see the last 30 years, because last 30 years are the representative for current period. So we also investigated from the station data from IMD. So last 30 years, if you look at this thing, this is the dry days. Dry days means no rain day. This is the rainy days. Rainy days were just to your 2.5 mm to 6.5 mm. That will moderate type of thing, rainfall. But this is the extreme rain. So there are many area, even last 30 years also, there are increasing frequency of heavy rainfall event. Okay. So this increasing frequency of extreme weathers, this increasing intensity of frequency of hydrometeoric disaster, increasing value of exposed element due to development and demographic expansion. So this is a disaster risk management is a critical component of climate change adaptation. That means climate change is directly linked with your extreme weather and also it had implication to the disaster management. Yeah, this already said. And to explain this, why this extreme, why the extreme events are increasing because of the global. So just if you have a look, global warming, rise in temperature. So rise in temperature means increasing evaporation, ocean evaporation. So evaporation will, because this is non-linear. The Clausius Clapeyron non-linearity. So slight increase in temperature means very significant amount of increase of evaporation. And once evaporation increase moisture content of the atmosphere. In atmosphere, the moisture holding capacity is increasing. That means it can hold more moisture. And increasing small scale convective system. Once the moisture holding capacity is there, a small scale convective system is there, and because of the increasing conditional instability means atmosphere is more unstable. So this cloud formation will there and rainstorm will occur. That's why heavy downpours are more frequent because of this, how the global warming is causing the increasing rainstorm over the central and north India. Because our convective instability, that means the degree of convective instability. In convective instability means if air pressure will rise without means just by giving small push, that will lead to the formation of cloud. So that atmosphere is conducive now. The degree of convective instability is increasing and increasing rise in temperature and moisture holding capacity increasing, and it is leading to the increasing rainstorm and heavy rainfall. But this has created another problem also because of the increase of frequency of heavy rainfall. So the average error doubling time over central India means the error now is in the prediction in the model is now that error whatever there is now coming early. That means your error of prediction is early. So lead time, you will not get sufficient lead time for capturing this high rainfall event. So that's why is we will not get very longer lead time that before 7 days or 8 days or 10 days, this much amount of rainfall will happen. So that is also not possible. So that will give you challenges to the prediction and disaster managers. Now, future climate scenario. Future climate scenario, there are international body, as I was mentioning, under different scenario. So what is the existing climate, different scenario, how the development, population development, industry development will take place. So IPCC, International Panel of Climate Change, they have come out with different scenario, extreme scenario of increasing CO2 up to large extent and up to moderate extent or something. So then under different scenario, already IPCC every 4 year, 5 year, they are bringing out the assessment report. So this is, we are not called prediction. This is, we call it projection. This is a projection. If this thing, the scenario will be like this, then the climate projection is expected to be like this. So this is a projection. And 2013, the AR5, that all inter-comparison model climate model inter-comparison project CMIP, they all integrated all the models, and the model results were assessed, and they gave the projection. Right. So in general, to summarize the projection, so this is the increase mean and variance. So future, so this future will be, you will have more hot and more extreme weather. So the projection is that temperature, in terms of temperature, you have more record hot weathers. And in terms of precipitation, projected climate trend, heavy rainfall probability is likely to increase. So this is overall what we have seen in the observed climate change, that is also more or less projected in the future climate scenario. Okay. And before IPCC now under preparing the next assessment report, AR6, so that will come very soon. Before that, IPCC has come out for the special report. That means 1.5 degree centigrade and 2 degree centigrade. If this is the temperature rise, then how it will be distributed on regional scale. So they have special report, they have brought out the special report of temperature rise by 1.5 degree from pre-industrial area or 2 degree. In that case, how it will be mean temperature, how it will be distributed on regional scale. If you see here, the Indian region, yeah, about many part we will have that rise in temperature by 1.5, and here also the regional scale, our India also will have about 2 degree. And mean precipitation very likely increase by precipitation percentage about 5 to 10%, and here also 5 to 10%. So this is the special report they have brought out. In case if some of the changes is by 1.5 degree increase temperature and 2 degree, then in that, under that scenario, what will be the changes in regional scale on temperature and rainfall. And with respect to your hot days also, how many days means there is also likely increase of hot days. So here if you see India, it is about something, some parts it is showing about 20 days. So changes in number of hot days. So here 2 degree case, it is slightly more. So that the hot days will increase. Similarly, the heavy rainfall, the projected changes in annual 5-day maximum precipitation as a function of global warming. If you see Indian region, so here there is an increase of 5-day heavy precipitation. That means the heavy precipitation also expected to increase under this changes of global warming by 1.5 degree. So whatever that means there is substantial evidence that human-induced global warming has led to an increase in frequency, intensity, and amount of heavy precipitation event at the global scale, and that is also reflected. That is going to be there over the South Asian country like India. Okay, so this climate change, how to address that one? So I will just cover some few things. So this is evident that climate change is occurring, and also the extreme weather is increasing. This is going to pose a serious problem to the disaster managers. So how do we provide the services? So the international body like WMO, World Meteorological Organization, they have come out with global framework of climate services. So under this scenario of climate change, how do we provide the service to all sector, those who will be affected, because health sector will be affected, your disaster increasing frequency with disaster management, that sector will be affected, your water sector will be affected, potable water availability will be reduced, health sector, bigger vector-borne disease. Now we are already one COVID we are facing. So energy sector demand will be. So all these sectors, even this is a 5 area only, but other sectors also will be affected because of the climate change. So how we prioritize these things and provide the best services so that the climate change risk will be managed for different sectors. And this is the WMO prime area for that also. They are working on this thing. And it's similar to GFCS. We have the national framework of climate services, and we are working also for India to provide the services to different sectors. And as far as our is concerned, since we are talking about the extreme weather, the problem area for this extreme weather, how do we predict this extreme weather? Means the predictability issue, the problem, what are the many challenges? How do we predict these mesoscale events? Due to global warming, the prediction of extreme event likely to due to prediction of extreme event likely to decrease. Means this one, with prediction, how we can predict. The heavy rainfall predictability is slightly less in the lower scale in the model. So we have already, as I mentioned, error doubling time of extreme rainfall event during last 30-year decrease from about 3 days to 1.5 days. So we will not get lead time. So all this is a challenging area for the early warning for the department like IMD, who is the national med service provider for the country. So we have to look out for the solution. Enhancement of observation network to detect mesoscale event. We will have the good observation networks. IMD working for that. Radar, satellite, high resolution model, improve the data estimation, mesoscale model. Then go for ensemble prediction, because probability sometimes one deterministic forecast may not give accurate results. So we'll go for a probabilistic forecast. So for that we have to have your ensemble prediction system, high resolution. Capacity building means forecaster has to be trained to deal with all these things. So for capacity building, so all these areas are a part of the disaster management, and IMD is working for that. So we have a all time scale prediction part is there, in addition to monitoring of the weather through satellite, radar, and other observational systems. We have a sophisticated model ranging from nowcasting, very few hour prediction, to the seasonal scale. So that we are, and also location wise. Now the people need location specific work forecast, mean block level, small subdivision level, all these level, district level. So at smaller spatial scale, smaller temporal scale. So we are we can give a good early warning for the disaster manager, and we are working for that. All sort of models we are having here, starting from dealing for a mesoscale event to synoptic scale event, 1 week something, monsoon low, depression, cyclone, and also the couple model like ocean atmosphere couple model, which will help for your extended range forecast like active break cycle or heat wave for longer duration. So we have a different set of models are there, and high resolution, and with the availability of high supercomputer in by IMD, Ministry of Earth Science, we are running all models, and all products are available for the forecaster to give the outlook and services to different sectors. And this is the how you are working in IMD. The forecast means all sort of observations will come, and that initial condition will be prepared, and the model will be run, and then numerical forecast will be created. Once the numerical forecast will be created, different models, different probability forecast, it will go to forecaster. Forecaster will see the model forecast, and also the initial thing directly what is initial parent conditions. Then he will generate the customized forecast for the that is called end forecast. This is not, which is not the direct model forecast. This is some tuned by, moderated by the forecaster, and that end forecast will be disseminated to the decision maker in terms of plain language or graphical language or warning, etc. So this we are working because, and this is a challenging area as extreme weathers are now more frequent on smaller spatial scale and smaller temporal scale, and this IMD will look working for that one. And another thing, IMD also is focusing now the impact that forecast. Already our respected DGM sir has already covered that part in his talk. How we impact. It is not only that this is the forecast we are giving. This forecast, what it will do, means what are the things it will affect. If multi-hazards warning, rainfall, wind, landslide, one event can cause many delays. So we are also working for that. That is called impact-based forecasting. To deal with these disaster, extreme weathers, increasing frequency of extreme weathers, we have to also adopt these things to minimize the effect of climate change or effect to reduce the impact of extreme weather. Now, just I will summarize here. If you summary, climate change is leading to increasing frequency of extreme weather that we have seen in our observations, observation data, as well as from various model projection also indicating the same. The risks of climate change are inequitable. With developing countries like India will be impacted more because India is the Southeast Asia country, population density, coastal, close to coastal, exposed to coastal area. So all these things. So the climate change, though it is global phenomena, the country like India will be impacted more. So we have to adopt the plan and etc. to deal with this situation. IMD has taken many steps toward improving the early warning of disaster weather in recent times. We have improved our observation system, modeling system, and also now the forecasting, and we are going for impact-based forecasting so that we have improved our early warning so that the disaster manager will be able to take that forecast to that is called actionable forecast to work for the to manage the disasters, impact of the disaster. Now the impact of forecasting will be very useful in minimizing the adverse impact of adverse weather through effective disaster management. So this is another area we have already started in cyclone, and now we are going for heavy rainfall, etc. And that definitely in future this will be a more useful tool for managing the disaster. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your detailed presentation. You have stressed upon climate system, climate variability and climate change, observed climate change over India and extreme weather, future climate scenario, implication of climate change on disaster management. Very much, sir, for a thought-provoking presentation. Now, for our next presentation, we have Professor Surya Prakash to share his view and experience. Professor Surya Prakash is the head of Geometeorological Risk Management Division and is in charge of 3 specialized centers. He was associated with various prestigious institutes such as CBRI, IIT Roorkee, JNU, Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology, FRI, VIT. He has also published several national and international research publications, books, articles, etc. in some of the high impact factor journals. Professor Surya Prakash, over to you.
Yeah. Let me now take you to the field that how these climate change related events are affecting us in disaster management. So I'll start from the international level, how we are going ahead. As in most of the presentation, we do present our SFDRR Sendai framework, in which we have proposed for ecosystem based disaster risk reduction. Ecosystem includes not only the environment, but also the entities around the environment, within the environment, which are getting affected by it. So ecological based systems approach for disaster risk reduction is the priority under the Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction. Now, next was important was sustainable development goals. I'll hurriedly go through few of the slides which I've already covered in previous webinars, but I will take you in details other slides. So these 17 goals also are affected by the changing climatic conditions, which are bringing huge number of disaster incidences and their heavy impacts. Now, most important, particularly for this particular webinar, is the climate change agreement that was done at Paris COP21, where our Honorable Prime Minister also participated, where the thresholds for fixing up the minimum limits of changes in the temperature were decided through human interventions. So PM also had talked about the extremities of weather due to climate change and its impact during COP21 in 2015. And as part of our preparations against the changing climatic conditions, Government of India actually prepared a national action plan on climate change with 8 major missions. 8 national missions were prepared: National Water Mission, National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystems, Green Mission, Energy Efficiency, Strategic Knowledge Mission, Sustainable Habitat, and Solar Missions. These were the some of these missions which were taken up as part of National Action Plan, and similarly at the state level, State Action Plan on Climate Change were also decided. Being a geologist, I don't look just at the instrumental data which are available with our organizations from the technological based data. We also go into the paleo records of Earth, where we in the sediments or the rocks we find the change in temperature, precipitation, and other conditions of the weather systems long back before our instruments came into existence. So paleo records of the Earth also indicate that there had been extreme weather changes in the past in the Earth's environment, and they are well recorded into the strata of the Earth. So these reflect that we had glacial, interglacial, and pre-glacial periods where we had different types of temperature conditions, and hence these changes will also continue, because variability is the nature of the environment and the climate. So variability beyond certain limits is actually of major concern to all of us, and that too because of anthropogenic interventions is the call of the day. So these changes, as predicted, what is our major concern in this climate change and disaster management is increasing temperature. As Dr. Patnaik said, the temperatures are rising, and these are going to bring more heat waves and hot weather conditions and droughts or water scarcities. So these kind of problems actually will lead to major disaster situations. Similarly, he said the changes in precipitation are also likely to happen because of convection currents changes and also because of orographic conditions. So these are changing amounts, intensity, and distribution. People are not prepared against this change because they are used to experience a different kind of environmental conditions. So now with this weather changes, it brings the higher amount of rainfall or higher intensities of rainfall or rainfall in unexpected areas. So unexpected, uncertain, and unknown actually events cause more disasters and impacts than the known events which are experienced by the people. Then the third most important is sea level rise. Now we people, those who are living in island areas, they experience it more. As the water precipitation increases, the sea level water will also increase, and it will lead to not only the coastal erosions but also the submergence of the island areas, which will be a major issue in the climate change events. The next is increasing frequency and intensity of extreme climatic events such as droughts, floods, cyclones, etc. Nowadays, sometimes the droughts they are continuously persisting and they are causing more impact than the seasonal droughts which are occurring on annual basis only. The persistence of these droughts cause more problems and impacts and severities. So these projected changes in climate will have impacts on disaster frequency, magnitude, and intensity. Now, how it is important for disaster risk management for all of us? This, if the frequency, intensity, and magnitude of disasters are increasing, these disasters may be in terms of cyclones, floods, droughts, landslides, health hazards, hailstorms, lightning, forest fire, heat wave, cold wave, glacial lake outburst floods, landslide dammed lake outburst floods, land erosion, and submergence. So these are some of the events which can happen along with climate change as disaster events. So these average climatic conditions and variabilities also modulate. Not only it is affecting the disaster events and phenomena, but also the socio-economic vulnerabilities, because people are not able to carry out their day-to-day activities which is affecting their livelihood and their economic conditions. Now, the other important parameters in the changing climatic conditions and extreme weather event situation is the kind of development we are undertaking. I am just showing you a photograph of Shimla, where you can see both horizontal and vertical intensification of development in the hills, which are actually suffering from cloudbursts, lightning, flash floods like phenomena. Now, what would happen if such an event occurs in such a densely populated area? How will be able to save people? How will they evacuate? Where will they go? And similarly, in the northeastern part of India, Gangtok, high-rise buildings. So whether it is northeast or northwest, I'm taking it through the hills where most of the disasters have been happening in the recent times, and they have suffered heavily from that. Now, another climatic event which happened in August 2010. In fact, the 4th August was the day when the heavy rains began in Leh area. 4th to 6th of August 2010, almost about 10 years ago from today, we had faced a heavy flood in a high altitude desert area which was having less than 100 mm per annum rainfall, happened to have a downpour of more than that in a single day. And because people were not prepared against such a situation, this kind of did happen. Now I'm talking about another issue which is being interrelated with climate change, is afforestation. In fact, when the Leh flash flood took place, some of the people actually asked few questions about it, that in Leh there was the biggest afforestation program of the world. And people said because lot of greenery has come up and appeared on this desertic land, and suddenly it has changed the environment, and that led to heavy precipitation to an area which was high altitude desert. So is this interrelated, the afforestation, climate change and rainfall, or something different has to be properly examined? I will go through that, but before that let me take you to another example. Most of you may be remembering that we had a heavy floods, flash floods and landslides in 2013 June. Somehow I had been there in Uttarakhand from 11th to 17th of June, and this happened on 16th and 15th, 16th of June. So that time, the lot of flood waters were there in the Uttarakhand area, in most of the valleys, river valleys. And before an year to that, there was a flash flood in Atsinganga river in the Bhagirathi river system, where you can see that the hotel which you are seeing in this photograph, Ganga Hotel, which was seen falling into the river, actually got eroded its foundation. And most of the tourists who were staying in this hotel were at risk. So this hotel was completely ruptured by the wooden logs which came along with the flood waters and filled with it. So lot of problems arise, and lot of the buildings which were adjacent to the banks of this river actually lost their foundations, whether in terms of columns or spread footings, and they fell into the river and became useless. They could not be anymore used for any occupational purposes. So these kind of situations did occur. An year before the Kedarnath tragedy happened, you can see a house located just close to the river. The ground story is almost underwater. So these kind of situation, and this again, whole of the building fell into the river. So, and bridges being blown. So beyond the bridge, upstream side, you have a wider area, and close to the bridge, you choose the narrow span, and narrow span means high velocity and high level of rise of water and sediments, causing erosion and loss of bridge structures. Now, I'll just explain you one event of 2012, Kashi area, Siganga River. I checked the water gauge records from the river system, and within that period when it happened from 1st to 10th of August 2012. So this is the major period. Most of these heavy floods, they are taking place in the months of August and September, because June, July, when the monsoons comes, water continues to accumulate and rise in water bed levels, and slowly in the August, most of the floods in the hills will be happening. So July, August, last part of July and August, first 15 days is more riskier compared to other areas. So you can see on 4th of August, the water level rose almost about 1121 meter from 1117 meter. Now annual rainfall, if I compare in terms of the events, we compared it for 2012 was much higher than other years, and the years when maximum rainfall taking place were almost comparable, except in few years where like 2009 we had less rainfall, so it was a drought year. 2009 throughout the country there were drought in many parts of the country. But if you look at the monthly distribution, as Dr. Patnaik said, almost 80% of our annual rainfall falls during monsoon periods. Now you can see the peaks in the monsoon years period for the different years. So peaks are there, and you can see a particular month, the peaks are much higher. For example, in 2011, during August and also in July 2011, the peak is very high. So we had almost more than 550 to 600 mm of rainfall during those months. Now, how does that affect? This affects in terms of how many days it takes to downpour that amount of rainfall in that particular month. If we look at that, the distribution of even number of days and the amount of rainfall is also interrelated to each other, and it also defines the intensity of the rainfall. So the number of days is variable, quite variable, and in fact when 2009, which was a drought year, the number of rainy days were also quite less. Whereas in 2011, 2010, the number of rainy days was higher. So that means the intensities were less, right? So 2012, now you see there is a peak in August and July again. So July and August in 2011 and 12 were very, very severe in terms of heavy downpour. Now, what else affects? Now, one is the atmospheric phenomena, that rainfall is happening. Other is the ground features. Now, if you look into the hills, the water comes from different tributaries into the main rivers, and while this main river crosses the hills, the valleys, it actually has a sinusoidal curve, and this sinusoidal curve actually leads to erosion of the toe of the slopes, and this erosion of the toe of the slopes leads to landslides, and landslide leads to blockade of the river. Blockade of river leads to rise of water level in the river systems, and ultimately that rise of water level puts pressure on that landslide dam, transitory landslide dam, it breaches, and finally you have the flash floods. So again erosion and landslides. So it's a cascading and concurrent phenomena that you can observe during heavy precipitation. And same things which I have just listed you out in 2012 August happened in 2013 June. Somehow in 2013 June, we had westerlies as well as the monsoons combined together and have brought heavy precipitations into the upstream areas, where we had a very heavy lake called Gandhi Sarovar. Gandhi Sarovar had a lot of water already present, and when this heavy precipitation took place, it breached and brought water towards the Kedarnath temple, which took the old the passage of the river system and met into the Mandakini and ultimately caused lot of problems. Alkananda is very well infamous and known for floods. 1970 floods, more than 300 villages were affected. Similarly, in Bhagirathi, 1978 floods are very, very well known events, and 2013 was also well known. And when it actually comes with what lot of sediments due to erosion, and this sediments, like I told you, when sinusoidal curve is there, there is one side which is actually degradation, where it cuts off, and the other side is aggradation. So you can see it actually deposits that silt and sediment on one side, and actually buildings get submerged underneath that. So this is one of those examples where sediment got accumulated during 2013 events, and erosion this is one of the incidents that you can see where road also went out. So these are kind of incidents you can see, the roads, the rivers, the slopes, everything goes down. And some of the existing landslides also get reactivated. This is one of infamous landslide called Shiro Bagad. It also get reactivated during the Kedarnath flood times. And this leads to inaccessibility to the people who are trapped into this disaster. So the two photographs you have seen, just they are at 11 a.m. The previous photograph, this is at around 4:30 p.m. on the same day when I crossed this area and found it. See, not only the Himalayan part, if you look into our southern part of the country also had experienced heavy, unprecedented rainfalls. For example, in Karwad in 2009, we had both the landslides and floods, which caused heavy casualties and problems as a disaster. Similarly, in Chennai. Now, one of the issues which happened to be there, not only the unprecedented rainfalls which are happening due to climate change, but also our development into those areas and the loss of water bodies which were able to accommodate the heavy waters coming from the precipitation is now lost. So these kinds of situations do occur in those areas. Now other events are the cyclonic events. Most of these cyclones are now becoming more severe and more intense and causing more precipitation also. Now cyclone-induced precipitation also causes flooding and landslides. And this also needs to be looked into. Odisha, one of the states which actually had suffered heavily in 1999 and afterwards also in several cyclones, actually also had incidences of landslides recently, which were not reported earlier. So cyclone-induced landslides are also there, drought conditions are also there, fires are also there. So in order to meet these challenges, now the states have state disaster management authorities. They are preparing their mobile-based app, web-based GIS apps, and giving information from the weather monitoring stations and IMD. So they are collecting this information and disseminating with the public through these apps. So this is one of the examples from Tamil Nadu. And we at the national level have actually devised an incident response system for response to such situations. So not only we should know what is the likelihood and what are the likely impacts, but also our preparedness against those impacts so that we can quickly, efficiently respond and also recover from that situation. So this incident response system should be well known to all those who are involved in disaster management systems, which has a three section: operation section, planning section, and logistics section, and where there is an incident commander responsible for undertaking immediate actions against disaster situations. And then we have the NDRF, which is also distributed across the country. Currently we have 12, there will be 16 battalions who will be taking care of this. Then state emergency operation centers. Any event, there are two types of actually early warning that we are getting. One which we are getting from the IMD, other which are local phenomena. Now IMD said they are dealing at mesoscale and synoptic level, but there can be small scale at the means where the local events may happen. Now the local communities can be one of the informers who can watch, who can alert, and also inform our emergency operation centers, who can then get this information passed to the higher levels. So there are two ways. One is from top to down approach for the early warning and information related to disaster situations. Other is bottom up. That means from grassroots level to the authorities. So they will display all the information, share all the information, and collect and have the helplines and the counseling centers for the affected communities, and also shelters for the evacuation purposes. So there has to be identified approaches so that we don't have to wait or waste our time in identification processes. It is all pre-planned and you can take actions and prevent the impacts of the disaster. Community's involvement is very much important, and until and unless community is made a major stakeholder in all our process, we cannot succeed. And in training our officials through face-to-face online programs, through tabletop exercises, and also making them clear about do's and don'ts in pre, during, and post disaster situations, and also apprising them about the technologies and making them familiar with those technologies and use them will be very useful. Nothing will be more useful than the field visits and field informations, field observations. So they are the grassroots level actions that were required. So we have to take them to the respective sites which are most oftenly affected or likely to be affected, and give them instructions right on the field and guide them there itself to do it. The webinars nowadays in COVID-19 situation have become one of the best tools to be in touch with all our stakeholders, and we are doing so. This kind of webinars would surely help us reach the stakeholders. And finally, where we cannot reach, we have developed some applications. For example, this is one of the programs which NIDM has developed, NIDM self-study program, NIDMSSP.in. You can access it and you can go through our various courses which you can attend free of course. No, there is no fee. You can just go to this portal, register yourself, and learn about disaster management. Finally, this is my slide, which is actually a stone on a crossroad. You move it in any direction, it will quickly regain its position. It was found in Japan, which is very much prone to various kind of disasters, including earthquake, flood, landslide, tsunami. So say to their society that like this stone, let's become resilient against disasters, quickly regain our position. With this word, I thank you all for this opportunity to share my views. So if any questions, I will be happy. Thank you, Dr. Ajit.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting about the climate change agreement in Paris. Sir highlighted about 8 national action plan on climate change, similarly the state action plan for the state. Example of intensive urbanization is happening, which is vulnerable to cloudburst, Leh flash flood, heavy flash flood and landslide in 2013 in Uttarakhand area and Kedarnath tragedy. You have beautifully explained the effects of various disasters with real ground photos, inducing a feeling of real scenario of disaster event. So thank you very much, sir, for your presentations. And now we have Dr. Kapil with us, and I request Dr. Kapil to enlighten our participants with your vast knowledge and experiences. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so good afternoon. Good afternoon to all our distinguished participants. And we are running late, so I will try to finish my presentation within 20 minutes. So as you are all aware, the climate change is taking place. As you have already heard from our eminent speakers, we are facing a climate emergency. This was declared by Professor Fenner also at the University of Cambridge some time back. We had a special issue on urban flood resilience, and rising global temperatures, intense and uncertain weather patterns, unregulated development, urban forms increasing hard impermeable surfaces, exposure of urban populations to catastrophic floods. These have been highlighted by the earlier speakers. Now the main challenge is all these things are happening, so what do we do about it? So in this brief presentation, I will try to highlight the some of the measures which we can take, especially related to flooding and urban flooding. So as you all know, before development, we had open surfaces. There was a nice groundwater recharge. There was no groundwater shortage, and so a lot of recharge and very little overflow over the surfaces. Now with urbanization and development of houses and human habitations, we have constructed over the green recharging surfaces. So very little recharge is taking place, and instead the overflows on the surface channels has increased, as you can see in the figure on the right. Then So the hydrologic response to development can be seen in the bottommost figure. Earlier, if you say had a flood peak in 45 minutes of about 100 units. Now, because of increased rainfall, increased surfaces, decreased recharge, now the same flood peak is reached in 15 minutes, and the peak is also increased because everything is now flowing over the surface. Now the past 2 years data reveals that all state capitals have been experiencing more than 50 millimeters per day of rainfall several times in a year, and even more than 100 millimeters per hour. Coastal cities are also vulnerable because we have long coastline. And coastal cities like Mumbai, Chennai, Kochi, etc. have experienced catastrophic flooding since 2005 from extreme rainfall. There is a special report on oceans and cryosphere released last year, and which indicates that the global mean sea level is not only rising but it is accelerating, and the numbers are there in these next 4 lines. And the main conclusion is that tiny islands and low-lying cities will expect to experience extreme sea levels rise by 2050, including Mumbai. Now, coming to the problem and the challenges. See, whenever we have a drainage system, everybody says increase the size of the drainage, put an extra pipe, and all those things. But we really want to do this. Where is the space in the cities? All the houses have already been constructed. So if I want to dig up the road, it will involve disrupting the traffic, relaying the telephone pipelines, relaying the water supply pipelines, and so on. So this is very costly and very destructive, and until it is completed, the problem will not be solved. So we did such a project in Grant Road about 10 years back. It was just a 100-meter stretch. Even in that, it took them 6 months just to relocate the water supply pipeline. So these are the issues. So with these difficulties, we now have to look at alternative measures. So we can classify the alternative measures into non-structural measures and structural measures, which use sensors for rainfall. So let us have a look at these one by one. Now, after the 2005 floods, at that time the IMD was not as modern as it is today. That time they had only 2 manually recording weather stations, which could record the rainfall at 8:30 and 5:30 in the evening. And when it was raining continuously, they had no idea of how much it is raining and where the flood is happening. So after 2005 floods, we installed 60 automatic weather stations for the Municipal Corporation of Bombay, and they were immediately functioning from June 2006. So these automatic weather stations, they can record rainfall at every minute intervals, but we set them to record at 50-minute intervals. So, and we install them in each sub-catchment, forming a grid. These are manned 24 hours. They are on the top of fire stations and all the BMC offices. And we also installed a flow gauge, ultrasonic flow gauge on the Methi River at that time. This shows further details of the automatic weather station. Now it is even at that time it cost around 2 lakh rupees per piece, including automatic the annual maintenance contract. But now if you see it on Amazon, it is available for 58,000 rupees. So anybody can buy it and install it on their rooftop. In USA, many of the schools are having it on their rooftops, and the children do it as exercise even in the 8th class. Bottom figure, you should see the control room, all the hotlines connected. So whenever the rainfall exceeds the threshold, everybody is informed. This shows the details of the flow gauge installed at Methi River. It basically shows the structural arrangement for mounting the ultrasonic flow gauge. As you can see, it looks just like a camera, as you can see in the X-ray machine. Now this figure shows the automatic weather stations. Now these have all been connected through internet, and there's also a MCGM app available. So anybody who has an app can download this and they can see the rainfall happening. Now in the past 24 hours, as you can see in this figure, we have had around, this is at early in the morning. but the latest figure which I have on my mobile, it is telling me that in the past 24 hours, we have had almost 300 millimeters of rainfall, and in 12 hours, we had 206 millimeters of rainfall. So we are having more rainfall in less time, and this has this lends support to the what the earlier speaker said, that we are going to see more and more rainfall in less amounts of time. So we have to prepare for this. So similar systems was proposed for Guwahati, and it is in progress. So they are having 18 automatic weather stations in the pipeline, and other cities should also take similar measures so that they can at least have information on where there is heavy rainfall. There is wide variability of rainfall. In South Mumbai, the average rainfall is around 1800 millimeters per year, and in North Mumbai, it is around 2500 millimeters per year. And so this variability is also seen in the daily rainfall with variations. Then coming to the structural measures, consider this simple two-channel system, two-pipe system. So we have 3 units of flow coming in from the left side and 3 units of flow coming from the right side. Now in the next channel, you will have 6 units of flow going in, and in the subsequent channel, which may be constricted because of constructions or whatever reason, you have capacity only for 4 units. So obviously, if you are having 6 units coming in and only 4 units capacity downstream, obviously there will be overflows and flooding will happen. So now the main challenge is there is no space for constructing new pipelines. There is no space for digging up the roads. So how do I contain these extra 2 units? So let us look at some of the measures which we can contain. So we do this what is known as attenuation. Those who have done electrical engineering will understand the term, or simply by providing storage in common language. So if I store 1 unit before the 4 unit pipe, before the 6 unit pipe, and make sure that only 4 units is going downstream, then obviously there will be no flooding in the affected area. So let us see what are the various storage techniques which are available to us. So these are known by different names in different countries. In Europe, they are known as sustainable urban drainage systems. In USA, they are known as best management practices. In Australia, they are known as water sensitive urban design. In India, they are known by a much simpler term. We simply call it Jugaad. So the techniques include infiltration, percolation, porous pavements, rooftop storage, parking area storage, storage in the ditches, dry ponds, wet ponds, inline detention storage, and underground concrete basins. Let us have a look at each of them one by one. Now this is a picture from the city of Portland in the state of Portland in USA. I had gone there some years back, and you see that on the rooftop they have got a very nice garden, and they have passed a legislation that whatever green area permeability I am losing during constructing the building, that much permeability I have to provide on the rooftop. So you can see that this is on the 14th floor. So you can see that similar permeability is maintained, same amount of recharge is taking place. So as far as the rainwater is concerned, it has still got the same amount of recharge available as was before the building. And that is what one of the ways in which we can reduce the discharge. So this shows more. So once you have the green area on the roof, you can lead the water through pipes, take it to the downstream, and all around the building provide an infiltration pit. And there are various configurations of infiltration pits. So if you type infiltration trench in Google, you will get more than 1 million pictures. So you can choose the one whichever is most appropriate to your town, city, or village, as the case may be. Another problem that we see is that now everybody wants to have paved footpaths, paved roads, paver blocks. Now the main challenge is that these paver blocks are heavy concrete blocks. They are totally impervious, and as you can see from this picture in Amritsar, because they are impervious and there is not proper connectivity to drains, ponding of water happens. You have all sorts of pollutants in the water system, and it is not pleasing at all. Plus it leads to outbreak of disease in the monsoon. So also there is no groundwater recharge, there is heavy flooding, and lot of muck to clean up after the rainfall is over. So the alternative is simple: provide porous pavements. Why do we have to have solid pavements? Make the pavements have some porosity, And porous pavement as defined by ASTM is one with porosity and permeability high enough to allow water to readily pass and significantly influence hydrology, routing habits and other positive environmental effects. There are two basic designs. One is asphalt or concrete pavement lacking finer aggregate. So simply finer aggregate. So we are authorizing the contractors not to put extra material. Instead, they can put less material. I don't mind paying them the same price as long as it does not cause flooding. Then the other ones are open cell cement blocks, and they are designed to provide a wort content of 15 to 25%. So let us see how they can be laid out. So here you can see on the left, you have these hollow paver blocks in which vegetation can also grow. So this serves both as a support for parking your cars as well as green areas for providing the vegetation, and it looks very pleasing. It looks aesthetic, and it reduces the problem of flooding, enables groundwater recharge and so on. On the right hand side, we see that the trees provide permeable resins around the trees instead of totally concreting them right up to the neck and suffocating the trees. So these simple measures will be very effective. So even if you put 20% of this, it will reduce 80% of the flooding in the critical areas. Then the next is source control, rainwater harvesting. Now, common misconception amongst the public is that rainwater harvesting means groundwater recharge. So they think that I simply put a pipe from the roof and lead it to the ground, and that is rainwater harvesting. But those of you who are engineers, they will know that in some areas we have sandy soil, other areas we have hard rock. So obviously, groundwater recharge is not possible in rocky areas. So rainwater harvesting actually can be done at any level. I can store the water on the rooftop, as you see in the left picture. I can store it at the ground level on the right picture, and I can construct an underground tank and store the water underground. One other thing which you will notice that the rate of rainfall is in millimeters per hour, whereas the rate of recharge is in millimeters per year. So how can the water recharge unless you provide a storage? And that is what the huge reservoirs and ponds and talabs in the villages do. You are storing the water during heavy rainfall, and gradually over months it recharges the groundwater. Now, one of the professors in UK at Imperial College actually constructed these rooftop rainwater rooftop tanks, so of different sizes. So if we consider with Indian context, you have a 100-liter Syntex tank, 200-liter, 500-liter and 1000-liter tanks. So he installed these in one of the localities, measured the inflows, outflows, rainfall, etc. And he found that a 100-liter tank could reduce the overflow by 11%, and a 1000-liter could reduce the overflow by 43%. So theoretically, it means that if everybody puts a 1000-liter tank in their premises, it will reduce the flooding by 40%. So instead of 4 feet of water, I will have only 2 feet of water, which is much more manageable. Then one can modify the system. You can have both solar harvesting as well as the panels can lead the water into the tank. And one should assume that this is not for potable water. Other than drinking, it can be used for all the purposes. And even if you want to drink it, if you boil it for 20 minutes and allow it to cool, most of the bacteria are killed in extreme cases. So these are two examples. One is near Nashik in Maharashtra. You see simple arrangement. You have the pipes leading from the roof into the tank and the bottom pipe going into the taps in this public toilet somewhere on the way from Mumbai to Nashik. Then on the right, you see a similar arrangement in the other side of the world in Brazil, almost similar. So people have the ability to think and implement what they think. Simple techniques, simple measures, but if implemented, they will go a long way in reducing the flooding in the urban areas. Then detention ponds or holding ponds, as they are known locally, also provide a good option. Strictly the difference is the detention ponds are dry between events, detention ponds have some water always, and wetlands have some plants in them. Now this is a detention pond in Japan. At the moment you can see a tennis court, people are playing tennis, having a nice time. You can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, around 12 tennis courts. And note the level of the clubhouse on the right, you can count around 25 to 30 steps leading to the top on the bottom right hand corner. Now see what happens during heavy rainfall. So the entire tennis court converts into a holding pond, and this is the way forward. So all our playing utilities, football fields, play fields, open spaces, gardens and so on, they should be located in low-lying areas so that they can be recreational areas in normal times, and maybe 4, 5, 10 days of the year when it really rains heavily, we can use them for holding the water, and they will not cause any damage to the residents in other areas downstream of the holding pond. So after the 2005 floods, we also looked at holding pond options for Mumbai, and because Bombay is so highly populated, there was no space for the holding pond in any of the areas, so we had to look at a holding pond online, that is on the river itself. So as you can see on the left, you can see the 6-meter high walls of the river. So we constructed a small weir which allows water to raw sewage to pass through during the normal times, and during heavy rainfall this mini weir provides holding capacity of 3000 cubic meters. So if this weir had not been there, all that 3000 cubic meters would have reached the downstream area immediately, thereby causing flooding. But now we are storing this, and now it is released gradually. So if you go back to the first figure, we are actually storing that extra 1 unit here and releasing it slowly so that there is no flooding on the downstream. So I am happy to let you know that after the construction of these walls and provision of these weirs, there has been no flooding within the 9-kilometer stretch of the Mithi River in Mumbai. Other areas get flooded, but that is because the measures have not been completed in those areas. This is the second holding pond which was constructed upstream. As you can see, the principle is the same. During normal times, it just allows water to pass through, it is dry, and during heavy rainfall, water ponds up behind the weir or the walls that have been constructed. Now, if there is no space, what do we do? So we can then use the existing playing grounds, open spaces, and construct underground holding pond. Just as we have got underground car parks in many of the malls, so instead of holding cars, we can hold the water. So whenever there is heavy rainfall, all the water is stored in these underground water park, I should call it, holding pond water storage facilities. And as you can see in the picture on the right, these are around 9 meters to 11 meters high. So such underground tanks have been installed in many cities now. I have visited the one in Barcelona in Spain. There they have got around 11 underground holding ponds, each the size of a football field. They were built for the Olympics at that time, and they have reduced significantly the flooding in the low-lying areas. And other advantage is that, see, if I want to increase the size of the drains and replace the existing drains, or say 7 kilometers long, as it happened in Hong Kong, it would take 10 years to complete, and this time is not available to us, or not the space is available. So the only option is that I have to construct huge underground holding ponds in suitable locations by proper planning, make sure that the necessary slope and storage is available, and this is the way forward for highly jam-packed cities like Bombay, Delhi. So the future roadmap, see, we should use the catchment as the unit of planning. So all the people who have studied hydrology know that water is planned using catchments and not the political boundaries or ward boundaries or city boundaries. And these sustainable urban drainage practices, best management practices or Jugaad should be part of the master plan. We need to identify location for source control, on-site detention, inside detention. We have to identify suitable low-lying areas, river footprints to be used as parks and holding ponds, and we have to improve the drainage features of existing drains. So in this direction, we have also done some work, and I was involved in writing the chapters on these for the NDMA Urban Flood Disaster Management Guidelines, which are available on the NDMA website. And last year, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, through the CPHO, they released the first storm drainage manual for design of stream drainage systems in August 2019, and they can be downloaded from the CPHO website. You all must be aware of the Amrit mission, where they have identified 500 cities for Amrit. And if you look at the thrust areas, 4 out of the 5 thrust areas pertain to water. So you have water supply, sewerage, stormwater drains to reduce flooding, and enhancing amenity values of cities by creating and upgrading green spaces, parks and recreation. So item 3 and item 5, they can be addressed by what we have covered in this presentation. And even if one of the participants implements it, I will be very happy that my presentation has been found useful. So thank you for listening, and I think I will hand you over to the presenter, to the rapporteur for this session. Thank you very much,
sir. Thank you very much, sir. Sir stressed upon measures for urban flooding, that is structural and non-structural measures, where he has suggested green rooftop, infiltration beds, infiltration trenches, rainwater harvesting, and the importance of porous pavements. He also highlighted some novel instruments for rainwater harvesting, such as water collections with solar cells, rainwater collections underground, retention ponds, and wetlands. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your views and experiences with our participants. Now we will take questions raised by the participants. Due to time constraints, we will restrict ourselves to only 4 to 5 questions. The first question is for Dr. Patnaik from IMD. Sir, are you there?
Yeah, I am there.
Okay, sir. So the question is raised by the participant that it is good to know the trend of climate change. He wants to know if IMD is initiating any preventing measures to minimize the rate of climate change.
Yeah. So that means IMD taking any step to minimize the rate of climate change. So this is actually climate change is not a single department which can do this thing. As you have seen, that basically the man-made climate change or human-induced climate change is due to the anthropogenic gases. Okay, anthropogenic, that is carbon dioxide. So IMD has a limited function. How to control all these things. So this is actually, if you recall this thing, this is international level they are discussing, and some action plan climate, then it is coming to the country. So different ministry will have to work together. So biofuel, let us say one example, giving you go for biofuel, so that we will less release the, so it is not a confined, we cannot control that climate, but what IND can do, IMD is doing. That means how to manage, how to improve the impact by forecasting, how to improve the early warning, so that the adverse impact of climate change can be minimized, not beyond that.
Very much, sir, for answering. The second question is for Kapil Gupta ji. Sir, are you listening?
Yes. Please tell me.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Sir, is there a plan to create flood risk map for high risk areas so that building rules can be informed by risk?
As part of the disaster risk management master plan for Mumbai, we developed such a flood hazard map for Mumbai in around 2010, and other cities are also now taking up the measures through their local colleges and institutions. So it takes a lot of training, lot of manpower, lot of hard work, and sometimes the information is not available, so you have to make necessary assumptions, because all the data will never be available. So you have to use your judgment and bring out the map within a reasonable time frame of, say, less than 1 year. Thank you.
Sir, one more question is for you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, how effective will interlinking of rivers be beneficial for flood control and disaster management?
See, it is a good idea conceptually, but if you look at the terrains on the way, you have so many mountains and hills, so many tunnels will have to be made, and it is a very difficult task. And at the moment, if we can simply link two drains properly in the cities before we start thinking of linking the rivers. Okay, so first you link the drains properly in the cities, reduce the flooding in the cities. Then later on we can think about mega tasks. First do the small task properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. The last question is for Surya Prakash ji. Sir, the question is, as individuals or at community level, what is the best thing we can do to reduce the adverse effect of climate change?
See, we have to learn to live with the nature. Nature is always variable, and humans have also learnt it. But recently, we are changing our places, and we are not actually having experiences related to the land where we live, our habitats. We should be well familiar with the habitats where we live, like the animal world. They are able to save themselves, right? For example, you must have learned that in the Andaman and Nicobar, when the tsunami had happened, the local tribes, they knew and they could observe and they could protect their lives and save themselves. So similarly, these floods, landslides, droughts, cyclones are natural phenomena. They are hazards. That's why we call them as hazards. They become disaster when we intervene or come in across them. So we have to build our houses with respect to hazards that prevail in those areas and also avoid their impact. So it is the communities which have to learn it. There are Professor Kapil Gupta told you several of the engineering measures, but most of our buildings, they are non-engineered, particularly for the community buildings, if I say. So in those cases, we have to give some traditional practices, local materials and designs which can be adopted. And also people to be made aware about the likely hazards that they can be struck upon, and also what to do and what not to do. That should be known to them. They should prepare against the remnant risk to save their lives and save others. So basically, a culture of risk assessment, prevention, mitigation, and preparedness at the community level is very, very important. As far as weather systems are, no understanding about the weather system is concerned, local communities do have some ideas. No, they can say that if the clouds are dark and no ring shape, then there is a likelihood of a rainfall. So they know it and they can prepare and they can even monitor. Monitoring rainfall is not a difficult task. Even at the rain gauges, manual rain gauges can be established and they can know when the rain exceeds a certain threshold and it can turn into a hazard or a disaster. So those practices should come into existence for us to avoid the impacts of those hazards and also prepare our communities against those hazards.
Thank you very much, sir. I think this answer will satisfy our participants. Now, so I'm going to give a vote of thanks. With that being said, we have come to end of this webinar. I, on behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable distinguished speakers, Professor Kapil Gupta from IIT Bombay, Dr. D.R. Patnaik, Scientist F from IMD, and Dr. Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM. Also, I would like to extend a special thanks to ED NIDM Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal for providing innovative and encouraging environment, moral guidance, continuous enthusiasm, and valuable suggestion thought throughout NIDM endeavors. I heartily congratulate all the participants for their active participation in this event. I would also like to thank Dr. Mrityunjay Mahapatra, DGM IMD, for his support in organizing this webinar series, as no program can become successful with a single person. So I extend my big thanks to our GMRD team, Mr. Raju Thapa, coordinator of this webinar series, Mr. Anil Kathat, and our IT team, Bala and Sobhit, for making this webinar a successful event with their contribution. I would like to end this webinar by bring it to the notice of all the participants that on 8 August, we have webinar on earthquake forecasting and management, jointly organized by National Center of Seismology, Government of India. Yes.
Sorry, it's not 8th August.
So 11th. Yeah, sir, sorry, sir, sorry. So it's on 11th August. And tomorrow we have, as sir told, that we have a 3 days training program on climate change, landslide and safe hill area development. And I will urge all our participants to join us in the next webinar and training program.